A viceroy, Virginia S.R., is a regal official who runs a country, colony, city or province in the name of and is representative of the monarch. The term derives from the Latin prefix vice, meaning in the place of, and the French word roi, meaning king. A viceroy's province or larger territory may be called a viceroyalty. The adjective form is viceregal, less often viceroyal. The term vicereina is sometimes used to indicate a female viceroy jury, although viceroy can serve as a gender-neutral term. Vicereina is more commonly used to indicate a viceroy's wife. Spanish Empire. The title was originally used by the Crown of Aragon, where beginning in the 14th century it referred to the governors of Sardinia and Corsica. After the unification, at the end of the 15th century, later kings of Spain came to appoint numerous viceroys to rule over various parts of the increasingly vast Spanish Empire in Europe, the Americas, and overseas elsewhere. In Europe, until the 18th century, the Habsburg crown appointed viceroys of Aragon, Valencia, Catalonia, Navarre, Portugal, Sardinia, Sicily, and Naples. With the ascension of the House of Bourbon to the Spanish throne, the historic Aragonese viceroyalties were replaced by new captaincies general. At the end of War of the Spanish Succession, the Spanish monarchy was shorn of its Italian possessions. These Italian territories, however, continued to have viceroys under the new rulers for some time. Sardinia would have a viceroy until 1848. See also: List of Spanish viceroys of Aragon, List of Spanish viceroys of Valencia, List of Spanish viceroys of Catalonia, List of Spanish viceroys of Navarre, List of Spanish viceroys of Sardinia, List of Spanish viceroys of Sicily, List of Spanish viceroys of Naples. In the Americas were incorporated into the Crown of Castile. With the Spanish colonization of the Americas, the institution of viceroys was adapted to govern the highly populated and wealthy regions of the North Overseas, New Spain, and the South Overseas, Peru and South America. The viceroys of these two areas had oversight over the other provinces, with most of the North American, Central American, Caribbean and East Indian areas supervised by the Viceroy in Mexico City and the South American ones by the Viceroy in Lima. These large administrative territories became known as viceroyalties. There were only two New World viceroyalties until the 18th century, when the new Bourbon dynasty established two additional viceroyalties to promote economic growth and new settlements on South America. New viceroyalties were created for New Granada in 1717 and the Rio de la Plata in 1776. The viceroyalties of the Spanish Americas and the Spanish East Indies were subdivided into smaller autonomous units, the audiencias, and the captaincies general, which in most cases became the basis for the independent countries of modern Hispanic America. These units gathered the local provinces which could be governed by either a crown official, a corregidor, or by a cabildo, a town council. Audiencias primarily functioned as superior judicial tribunals, but unlike the European counterparts, the New World audiencias were granted by law both administrative and legislative powers. Captaincies general were primarily military districts set up in areas with a risk of foreign or Indian attack, but the captains general were usually given political powers over the provinces under the command, because the long distances to the viceregal capital would hamper effective communication. Both audiencias and captains general were authorized to communicate directly with the Crown through the Council of the Indies. The Bourbon reforms introduced the new office of the Intendant, which was appointed directly by the Crown and had broad fiscal and administrative powers in political and military issues. See also: Viceroyalty of the Indies, Viceroyalty of New Spain, List of Viceroys of New Spain. Viceroyalty of Peru, List of Viceroys of Peru. Viceroyalty of New Granada, List of Viceroys of New Granada. Viceroyalty of the Rio de la Plata, List of Viceroys of the Rio de la Plata. Portuguese Empire, India. The title of Viceroy being awarded to members of the nobility. Viceroys, governors and governing commissions were many times interleaved until the last Viceroy Afonso, Prince Royal of Portugal, in 1896. From 1505 to 1896 Portuguese India, the name India, and the official name Estado da India, including all Portuguese possessions in the Indian Ocean, from southern Africa to Southeast Asia and Australasia until 1752 was governed either by a viceroy or governor from its headquarters, in Goa since 1510. The government started 6 years after the discovery of sea route to India by Vasco da Gama in 1505, under first Viceroy Francisco de Almeida. Initially, King Manuel I of Portugal tried a power distribution with 3 governors in different areas of jurisdiction, a government covering the area and possessions in East Africa, Arabian Peninsula and Persian Gulf, overseeing up Cambay, a second one ruling the possessions in India and Ceylon, and a third one from Malacca to the Far East. However, the post was centered by Governor Afonso de Albuquerque, who became plenipotentiary, and remained so. The duration in office was usually 3 years, possibly longer, given the power represented. Of the 34 governors of India in the 16th century, only 6 had longer mandates. List of viceroys and colonial heads of Portuguese India. Portugal. During some periods of the Iberian Union, between 1580 and 1640, the King of Spain, who was also King of Portugal, appointed viceroys to govern Portugal itself, as the king had multiple realms throughout Europe and delegated his powers to various viceroys. Brazil. After the end of the Iberian Union in 1640, the governors of Brazil that were members of the Portuguese high nobility started to use the title of Viceroy. Brazil became a permanent viceroyalty in 1763, when the capital of the state of Brazil was transferred from Salvador to Rio de Janeiro. British Empire, British India and the Indian princely states. Following the adoption of the Act that transferred the government of India from the East India Company to the Crown in 1858, the Governor-General as representing the Crown became known as the Viceroy. The designation Viceroy, although it was most frequently used in ordinary parlance, had no statutory authority, and was never employed by Parliament, although the proclamation of 1858 announcing the assumption of the government of India by the Crown referred to Lord Canning as first Viceroy and Governor-General. None of the warrants appointing his successors referred to them as viceroys, and the title, which was frequently used in warrants dealing with precedents and in public notifications, was basically one of ceremony used in connection with the state and social functions of the sovereign's representative. The Governor-General continued to be the sole representative of the Crown, and the Government of India continued to be vested in the Governor-General in Council. The Viceroys reported directly to the Secretary of State for India in London and were advised by the Council of India. They were largely unencumbered in the exercise of their authority and were among the most powerful men on earth in the Victorian and Edwardian eras, ruling over an entire subcontinent and with a large military force at the disposal in the form of the British Indian Army. Under the terms of the Government of India Act 1919, viceroys shared some limited aspects of their authority with the Central Legislative Assembly. One of the first steps of reform as India progressed towards Home Rule under the Government of India Act 1935, independence as a dominion in 1947, and ultimately the establishment of a republic in 1950. Alongside the Commander-in-Chief, India, the Viceroy was the public face of the British presence in India, attending to many ceremonial functions as well as political affairs, as the representative of the emperors and empresses of India, who were also the kings and queens of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland. The Viceroy served as the Grand Master of the two principal chivalric orders of British India, the Order of the Star of India and the Order of the Indian Empire. During the office's history, the Governors-General of India were based in two cities, Calcutta during the 19th century and New Delhi during the 20th century. Additionally, whilst Calcutta was the capital of British India, the Viceroys spent the summer months at Simla. The two historic residences of the Viceroys still stand, the Viceroy's House in New Delhi and Government House in Calcutta. They are used today as the official residences of the President of India and the Governor of West Bengal, respectively. The portraits of the Governors-General still hang in a room on the ground floor of the Presidential Palace, one of the last vestiges of both the Viceroys and the British Raj. Notable Governors-General of India include Warren Hastings, Lord Cornwallis, Lord Curzon, the Earl of Minto, Lord Chelmsford, and Lord Mountbatten. Lord Mountbatten served as the last Viceroy of British India, but continued on as the first Governor-General of the Dominion of India, Dominions and Commonwealth realms. The Lords Lieutenant of Ireland were often referred to as Viceroy after 1700 until 1922, even though the Kingdom of Ireland had been merged in 1801 into the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland. The term has also been occasionally applied to the Governors-General of the British Dominions. In law, the Governor-General of Canada, the Lieutenant Governors of the Canadian provinces and the Governors-General of Australia and Governors of the Australian states are not Viceroys, although the term is sometimes used. Russian Empire. Namestnik was an office position in the history of the Russian Empire. It can be translated as Viceroy, Deputy, Lieutenant, or literally in-place appointee. The term has two periods of usage with different meanings. Namestnik replaced the obsolete position of voivoda by Peter I. In the 12th–16th centuries, namestniks were in charge of local administration. In particular, they ruled uyezds. In the 18th–20th centuries, a namestnik was a person in charge of namestnichestvo, with plenipotentiary powers. The latter has traditionally been translated as viceroyalty and namestnik as viceroy of vicegerent. For example, Mikhail Vorontsov was namestnik of Bessarabia and of the Caucasus. Sometimes the term is confused with Governor-General. For example, during Vorontsov's term of office in Bessarabia, 7 Governor-Generals were in, and at the same time he held the office of Governor-General of New Russia. The following namestnik existed under the Romanov Emperors of Russia, Kingdom of Poland, while in personal union under the Emperors of Russia as kings, had only one viceroy. The 9th of December 1815 to 1 December 1830, Grand Duke Konstantin Pavlovich Romanov, Viceroyalty of the Caucasus, Transcaucasia had viceroys of Transcaucasia. The Tsar Paul I 1799 formation of the Russian-American Company obviated viceroys in the colonization of the northwestern New World. Other viceroyalties. French colonies. New France, in present Canada. After a single governor had lieutenants general and viceroys, the 15th of January 1541, September 1543, Jean-François de la Roque, Sieur de Roberval. After September 1543 to 3 January 1578, abandonment again the 3rd of January 1578, February 1606, Troyes de Mesguez, Marquis de la Roche-Mesguez, February 1606 to 1614, Jean de Biencourt, Sieur de Poutrincourt, Baron de Street, just next to series of viceroys, the 8th of October 1611 to 1672, later governors and governors-general. Italian colonies and Italian viceroy, the highest colonial representatives in the Federation of Italian East Africa, were no longer styled High Commissioner, but Viceroy and Governor-General from the 5th of May 1936, when Italian forces occupied Ethiopia, until the 27th of November 1941, when the last Italian administrator surrendered to the Allies. The Italian King Victor Emmanuel claimed the title of Emperor of Ethiopia and declared himself to be a successor to the Negus in August, even though Emperor Haile Selassie I continued to hold this title while in exile, and resumed his actual, physical throne on the 5th of May 1941. On the 7th of April 1939, Italy invaded the Kingdom of Albania. As Viceroy of Albania of Victor Emmanuel III of Italy were the Marchese Francesco Giacomoni di San Savigno, and after his departure General Alberto Pariani. Ban of Bosnia. Ban Boric was the first ruler and Viceroy of Bosnia, appointed by Ge Acute Za2 of Hungary by 1154. His war affairs are documented as he fought several notable battles. He also maintained ties with Knights Templar and donated lands in Bosnia and Slavonia to their order. His own biological brother Dominic was on record as a Knight Templar. Ban of Croatia. From the earliest medieval period in the Kingdom of Croatia, the position of Viceroy was held by Ban of Croatia, who acted as king's representative in Croatian lands and supreme commander of Croatian army. In the 18th century, Croatian bans eventually become chief government officials in Croatia. They were at the head of Ban's government, effectively the first prime ministers of Croatia. The last Ban held his position until 1941 and the collapse of Yugoslavia in World War II. Ancient antecedents. An equivalent office, called the Exarch, was created in the Byzantine or Eastern Roman Empire towards the end of the 6th century for governors of important areas too far from the imperial capital of Constantinople to receive regular instruction or reinforcement. The chosen governors of these provinces were empowered to act in place of the monarch with more discretion and autonomy than was granted other categories of governor. This was an extraordinary break from the centralized traditions of the Roman Empire and was an early example of the principle of viceroyalty. Non-Western counterparts. As with many princely and administrative titles, viceroy is often used, generally unofficially, to render somewhat equivalent titles and offices in non-Western cultures. Africa. In cultures all over the continent of Africa, the role of viceroy has been subsumed into a hereditary noble as opposed to a point of administrative position. In the Arabo-Berber North, for example, the title of Khalifa is often used by individuals who derive their authority to rule from someone else in much the same way as a viceroy would. Elsewhere, subordinating Khosis under the rule of a paramount chief like the king of the Zulu nation of southern Africa are subordinate Balis in the realms of the reigning Obas of West African Yorubaland continue to occupy statutorily recognized positions in the contemporary countries of South Africa and Nigeria as the customary representatives of the respective principles in the various areas that are under their immediate control. Ottoman Empire. The Khedive of Egypt, especially in the dynasty initiated by Muhammad Ali Pasha, this officer established an almost autonomous regime in Egypt, which officially still was under Ottoman rule. Although Muhammad Ali used different symbols to mark his independence from the Sublime Porte. He never openly declared himself independent. Adopting the title of Viceroy was yet another way to walk the thin line between challenging the Sultan's power explicitly and respecting his jurisdiction. Muhammad Ali Pasha's grandson, Ismail Pasha, subsequently received the title of Khedive, which was almost an equivalent to Viceroy. Vietnamese Empire. The post of TNTRN was a political post in the earlier Vietnamese Nguyen dynasty. From 1802, under the reign of Emperor Gia Long, there were always two TNTRN who directly ruled Vietnam's northern part named Than Long and the southern part named Gia Thin, while Nguyen emperors ruled only the middle part named Vung King Kentucky. TNTRN is sometimes translated to English as Viceroy. In 1830, Emperor Minh Mang abolished the post in order to increase the imperial direct ruling power in all over Vietnam. Chinese empires. During the Han, Ming and Qing dynasties, there existed positions of viceroys having control over various provinces.